There are two things that interest me, and they're both power, ultimately. One is not having it, and one is abusing it. And I think we all go through, and I definitely know that I went in my life through a period for a long time of having none to not realizing I had it and abusing it, and to an understanding of that and wishing to be redeemed for it. And I think that's, just part of the maturation process. It's one of the most essential things. And again, I want to separate that from a religious idea like original sin, which pisses me off to no end, because when you feel bad about everything, you let yourself get away with everything. But if you feel bad about only the things you have actually done that are wrong, then you are on a path to redemption, which I don't think there's anybody who doesn't need to be on that path every now and again.
Are we in for a ride today? Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, theys and thems. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, I'm Monica Bryant, and this channel is a living document of my journey as a filmmaker. As promised, today we're going to dive deep into the allegations of Joss Whedon and his bad behavior. This was, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. And I think this is why people say that you shouldn't meet your heroes, because your heroes are probably actually terrible people. Now, I started watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer when I was 13, 14 years old. And Joss Whedon was the ultimate feminist to me. He was a feminist hero. He was a feminist icon. And I'm not alone in that.
In Joss we trust.
People started taking issue with Joss Whedon, specifically when it came to Age of Ultron, because of the handling of Black Widow's character. People did not appreciate that there was a forced relationship between her and Bruce Banner. Nobody really understood why that was happening. There's a scene in the movie where Scarlett Johansson randomly pops up behind the bar at a party. They're at like a club or a party, and she's pouring Bruce a drink, and people are like, why is she doing that? And the whole thing with her being the only person that can calm him down. People took issue with the fact that she called herself a monster because she can't reproduce. The other side of that, though, is why is it okay for Hawkeye to have a family? He had a wife and like a kid on the way. Why is it okay for Hawkeye to have a family? Totally fine. Nobody gets upset by that. And then I think in an interview, he calls Scarlett Johansson's character like a slut because it's implied that she has slept around with different Avengers. But also the other side of that argument is that Tony Stark is a playboy. Like it's his whole persona in the first film. And nobody says anything about it. And of course, because we have that double standard that exists in our society where a man can be promiscuous and no one says anything, but as soon as a woman does it, oh my God, the world is ending. So even if Black Widow wanted to be a mom someday, but that was taken away from her, I don't see how it's bad for her to acknowledge a part of herself that she can never have. And maybe she kind of wishes that she could have it. But, other Avengers are allowed to want family and to want to be in relationships, and nobody says anything. I mean, did Captain America not go back in time to be with Peggy? And he's allowed to do that. But Scarlett Johansson can't talk about how she wants to have babies and can't. Okay. But anyway, I digress. This video is about Joss Whedon. I just had to bring that up because that is sort of where the discourse started to bubble into the surface. People were picking apart Age of Ultron and these issues that they had with the movie. Then Joss Whedon's ex-wife, Kai Cole, penned a personal essay that she posted online, and it set the internet on fire. On August 20th, 2017 at 12:05 p.m., Kai Cole penned an open letter that hit the internet on a website called The Wrap. This is what the letter had to say. I've been asked some questions by the press recently about my divorce from Joss Whedon, to whom I was married for 16 years. There is misinformation out there, and I feel the best way to clear up the situation is to tell you my truth. Let me begin by saying I am a very private person, and the act of writing this is antithetical to who I am and everything I stand for. Yet at the same time, I feel compelled to go on the record and clear up some misperceptions. I don't think it is fair to me or other women to remain silent any longer. I met Joss Whedon in 1991. I was driving across the country from Massachusetts on a whim and met him when I was passing through Los Angeles. We fell in love, and I moved to LA so we could be together. I was with him when his Buffy the Vampire script was adapted and the resulting movie released. It was painful to see how his vision was interpreted by the production team, and on our honeymoon to England in 1995, I urged him to figure out how to turn it into a TV show. He didn't want to work in television anymore, following in his father's and grandfather's footsteps, but I convinced him it was the fastest way to get the experience he needed so he could direct his own film someday. I had no idea in that lovely garden in Bath that it would change everything. There were times in our relationship that I was uncomfortable with the attention Joss paid other women. He always had a lot of female friends, but he told me it was because his mother raised him as a feminist, so he just liked women better. He said he admired and respected females. He didn't lust after them. I believed him and trusted him. On the set of Buffy, Joss decided to have his first secret affair. 15 years later, when he was done with our marriage and finally ready to tell the truth, he wrote me, "When I was running Buffy, I was surrounded by beautiful, needy, aggressive young women. It felt like I had a disease, like something from a Greek myth. Suddenly, I am a powerful producer, and the world is laid out at my feet, and I can't touch it." But he did touch it. He said he understood I would have to lie or conceal some part of the truth for the rest of my life. But he did it anyway, hoping that that first affair would be enough, and then he could move on and outlast it. Joss admitted that for the next decade and a half, he hid multiple affairs and a number of inappropriate emotional ones that he had with his actresses, co-workers, fans, and friends while he stayed married to me. He wrote me a letter when our marriage was falling apart, but I still didn't know the whole truth, and said, "I've never loved anyone or wanted to be with anyone in any real or long-term way except for you ever. And I love our life. I love how you are, how we are, who you are, and what we've done, both separately and together, how much fun we have." He wanted it all. He didn't want to choose, so he accepted the duality as part of his life. Then later, after he confessed everything, he told me, "I let myself love you. I stopped worrying about the contradiction. As a guilty man, I knew the only way to hide was to act as though I were righteous. And as a husband, I wanted to be with you like we had been. I lived 2 lives." When he walked out of our marriage and was trying to make things seem less bewildering to help me understand how he could have lied to me for so long, he said, "In many ways, I was the height of normal in this culture. We're taught to be providers and companions, and at the same time, to conquer and acquire, specifically sexually. And I was pulling off both." Despite understanding on some level that what he was doing was wrong, he never conceded the hypocrisy of being out in the world, preaching feminist ideals while at the same time taking away my right to make choices for my life and my body based on the truth. He deceived me for 15 years so he could have everything he wanted. I believed, everyone believed, that he was one of the good guys, committed to fighting for women's rights, committed to our marriage and to the women he worked with. But I now see how he used his relationship with me as a shield, both during and after our marriage, so no one would question his relationships with other women or scrutinize his writing as anything other than feminist. I thought we were a couple, a team. I was a powerful influence on the career choices Joss made during the 20 years we were together. We lived together for 4 years before marrying. I kept him grounded and helped him find the quickest way to the success he so deeply craved. I loved him, and in return, he lied to me a lot. He said after he left, he understood. It's not just like I killed you, but that I'd done it subtly over years. That I'd been poisoning you, chipping away at you. He made me doubt my own instincts and watch me move further away from my personal values and social mores, trying to connect with him, never telling me it was impossible. By the time he finally confessed the truth 15 years after his first affair on the set of Buffy, I was broken. My brain could not fit my experience of our life together through the new lens of his deceit. My entire reality changed overnight, and I went from being a strong, confident woman to a confused, frightened mess. I was eventually diagnosed with complex PTSD, and for the last 5 years, I've worked hard to make sense of everything that happened and find my balance again. It has not been easy, because even though in my personal life I have been completely open about what happened, publicly, people only know his superficial presentation of us, him as the lovable geek feminist, and me in the background as his wife and supporter. We're finally divorced. I'm doing architecture again and slowly getting my life and self-esteem back. Until recently, Joss was still letting the illusion of our marriage stay intact. Now that it is finally public, I want to let women know that he is not who he pretends to be. I want the people who worship him to know he is human, and the organizations giving him awards for his feminist work to think twice in the future about honoring a man who does not practice what he preaches. But no matter what happens or how people interpret this statement, I no longer have to carry the burden of Joss's long-term deceit and confessions. I am free. So basically, Kai Cole was the one encouraging Joss, supporting him, all while he was running around cheating on her, pretending to be a feminist. As Kai Cole said, if he was a real feminist, he wouldn't have taken away her right to make choices about her body based on the truth. If you go into the deep internet subreddits, you will find thread upon threads about Kai Cole's letter and about the alleged women that Joss Whedon was having affairs with on the set of Buffy. I did look at it. I saw the names. There was a person who said that they worked at an agency where a certain actress would come in and out, and that her and Joss were having an affair. Some of the stuff written in some of these articles is crazy. And as far as I know, and as far as my research has led me, no one has come forward and said, oh, I'm the person Joss Whedon was having an affair with. Because honestly, why would you do that to yourself? The internet would roast you so badly. So whoever they are smart to remain anonymous and keep their mouths closed. I'm not gonna say their names here because nothing has been confirmed and we don't know that for sure. What we can do though is move on to 3 years later when Ray Fisher came out and said that Joss Whedon was treating him like crap on the set of Justice League.
Yeah, I mean, Joss is a great guy, and Zach picked a good person to come in and clean up and finish up for him.
Zack Snyder was originally set to direct Justice League, but exited the project due to a death in his family. Ray Fisher played Cyborg in the film. When Joss Whedon took over, he wanted to make changes that would minimize Fisher's role and bring back Cyborg's catchphrase, "Booyah," which originated from Teen Titans. Fisher claims he tried speaking to Joss about how his character would be perceived in the black community, but Joss wasn't trying to hear that and said, "It feels like I'm taking notes right now, and I don't take notes from anybody, not even Robert Downey Jr." Fisher took his concerns to then WB exec John Berg, who tried to guilt Fisher by stating he could lose his job if the actor didn't comply with changes. Fisher's conversations with Jeff Johns weren't any better. Johns told Fisher to play Cyborg as if he were Quasimodo. Joss responded by calling Fisher a bad actor in both senses. Fisher took to Twitter to elaborate on his previous tweets by stating, Joss Whedon's on-set treatment of the cast and crew of Justice League was gross, abusive, unprofessional, and completely unacceptable. He was enabled in many ways by Jeff Johns and John Berg. Accountability is greater than entertainment. Allegedly, Joss had an attitude on set, was rude to people, was calling Diana's character Natasha, and was just being a nuisance and a menace to people. The studio did launch an investigation, though. Fisher's allegations against Joss Whedon gave Charisma Carpenter the courage to step forward and speak on her experience with Joss in a louder voice than she had in 2009. The actress previously mentioned getting cut from Angel due to her pregnancy, but her admission mostly fell on deaf ears. Now, everyone was listening. This is what the actress had to say in a set of 2 tweets on February 10th, 2021. For nearly 2 decades, I have held my tongue and even made excuses for certain events that traumatized me to this day. Joss Whedon abused his power on numerous occasions while working together on the sets of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel. While he found his misconduct amusing, it only served to intensify my performance anxiety, disempower me, and alienate me from my peers. The disturbing incidents triggered a chronic physical condition from which I still suffer. It is with a beating, heavy heart that I say I coped in isolation and at times destructively. Last summer, when Ray Fisher publicly accused Joss of abusive and unprofessional behavior toward the cast and crew during reshoots on the Justice League set in 2017, it gutted me. Joss has a history of being casually cruel. He has created hostile and toxic work environments since his early career. I know because I experienced it firsthand, repeatedly, like his ongoing passive-aggressive threats to fire me, which wreaks havoc on a young actor's self-esteem, and callously calling me fat to colleagues when I was 4 months pregnant, weighing 126 pounds. He was mean and biting, disparaging about others openly, and often played favorites, pitting people against one another to compete and vie for his attention and approval. He called me in for a sit-down meeting to interrogate and berate me regarding a rosary tattoo I got to help me feel more spiritually grounded in an increasingly volatile work climate that affected me physically. Joss intentionally refused multiple calls from my agents, making it impossible to connect with him to tell him the news that I was pregnant. Finally, once Joss was apprised of the situation, he requested a meeting with me. In that closed-door meeting, he asked me if I was going to keep it and manipulatively weaponized my womanhood and faith against me. He proceeded to attack my character, mock my religious beliefs, accuse me of sabotaging the show, and then unceremoniously fired me the following season once I gave birth. At 6 months pregnant, I was asked to report to work at 1 a.m. after my doctor recommended shortening my work hours. Due to long and physically demanding days and the emotional stress of having to defend my needs as a working pregnant woman, I began to experience Braxton Hicks contractions. It was clear to me that the 1 a.m. call was retaliatory. Back then, I felt powerless and alone. With no other option, I swallowed the mistreatment and carried on. After all, I had a baby on the way, and I was the primary breadwinner of my growing family. Unfortunately, all this was happening during one of the most wonderful times in a new motherhood. All the promise and joy sucked right out, and Joss was the vampire. Despite the harassment, a part of me still sought his validation. I made excuses for his behavior and repressed my own pain. I have even stated publicly at conventions that I'd work with him again. Only recently, after years of therapy and a wake-up call from the Time's Up movement, do I understand the complexities of this demoralized thinking. It is impossible to understand the psyche without enduring the abuse. Our society and industry vilify the victims and glorify the abusers for their accomplishments. The onus is on the abused, with an expectation to accept and adapt to be employable. No accountability on the transgressor who sails on unscathed, unrepented, remorseless. These memories and more have weighed on my soul like bricks for nearly half of my life. I wish I said something sooner. I wish I had the composure and courage all those years ago, but I muted myself in shame and conditioned silence. With tears welling, I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to Ray and others for remaining private about my experience with Joss and the suffering it has caused me. It is abundantly evident that Joss has persisted in his harmful actions, continuing to create wreckage in his wake. My hope now, by finally coming forward about these experiences, is to create space for the healing of others who I know have experienced similar serialized abuses of power. Recently, I participated in Warner Media's Justice League investigation because I believe Ray to be a person of integrity who is telling the truth. His firing as Cyborg in The Flash was the last straw for me. Although I am not shocked, I am deeply pained by it. It troubles and saddens me that in 2021, professionals still have to choose between whistleblowing in the workplace and job security. It has taken me so long to muster the courage to make this statement publicly. The gravity of it is not lost on me. As a single mother whose family's livelihood is dependent on my craft, I'm scared. Despite my fear about its impact on my future, I can no longer remain silent. This is overdue and necessary. It is time. Ray Fisher retweeted Charisma Carpenter's post saying, "Charisma Carpenter is one of the bravest people I know. I am forever grateful for her courage and for lending her voice to the Justice League investigation. Read her truth, share her truth, protect her at all costs. It is time." This triggered an outpouring of support from other past cast members from Buffy and Angel. Sarah Michelle Gellar posted on her Instagram, "While I am proud to have my name associated with Buffy Summers, I don't want to be forever associated with the name Joss Whedon. I am more focused on raising my family and surviving a pandemic currently, so I will not be making any further statements at this time. But I stand with all survivors of abuse and am proud of them for speaking out." This post was reshared by Michelle Trachtenberg, who played Dawn on Buffy, and she said, "Thank you, Sarah Michelle Gellar, for saying this. I am brave enough now as a 35-year-old woman to repost this because this must be known. As a teenager with his not appropriate behavior, very not appropriate, so now people know what Joss did. The last comment I will make on this was there was a rule saying he is not allowed in a room alone with Michelle again." Claire Kramer added, "For what it's worth, I believe and stand with all Charisma and at Ray Fisher and Amber Benson and others who have the strength to come forward with their truth. A lot of this industry needs a reset." Amber Benson said, "Buffy was a toxic environment and it starts at the top. All Charisma is speaking truth and I support her 100%. There was a lot of damage done during that time and many of us are still processing it 20 plus years later." Danny Strong added, "Sending love and support to Charisma, Amber Benson, Michelle, and Sarah Michelle Gellar, and all who have gone public about their toxic experiences on Buffy. I truly admire your bravery in speaking out." Adam Bush wrote, "I support Charisma, Sarah, Amber, and Michelle. I admire their courage and leadership. The truth is powerful, and it prevails." Tom Link tweeted, "So as not to center myself in the narrative, I thought it was important to leave space for women and series regulars of Buffy the Vampire Slayer to speak. But while I am here listening, I wanted to take a moment to send my love and support to the women of Buffy." There were many more outpourings of support from David Boreanaz, who played Angel. He told Charisma Carpenter, "I'm here for you to listen and support you, proud of your strength." Amy Acker, who portrayed Winifred Burkle, and Illyria on the Buffy spinoff. Angel also posted her words of support. I will always be proud of the work we all did on Angel. While I personally had a good and professional experience, it's heartbreaking to hear that not everyone did. I do not condone any actions that made anyone feel hurt or uncomfortable, and I offer love and support to everyone who is speaking out their truths. Marty Noxon, as a writer, also said that she would like to validate the women of Buffy and support them to tell their stories. James Marsters, who played Spike, also offered his love and support to his co-stars and said, Buffy's set was not without challenges. While I will always be honored to have played the character of Spike, the Buffy set was not without challenges. I do not support abuse of any kind, and I'm heartbroken to learn of the experiences of some of the cast. I send my love and support to all involved. Eliza Dushka, who played Faith on Buffy and Angel, also added her support. My heart aches for you, and I'm sorry you have held on to this for so long. Your post was powerful, painful, and painted a picture we'll collectively never unsee or unknow. Thank you. I hadn't known it, and I won't forget it. Joss Whedon had the opportunity to step forward, take accountability for the things he has said and done, and to apologize to all parties involved. But instead of doing that, he chose to deflect and deny. A rep for Whedon declined to comment on Carpenter's allegations and did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Trachtenberg and Benson's allegations. And when he finally did decide to come forward and say anything in a lengthy interview with New York Magazine, Whedon denied Gal Gadot's allegations that he threatened her. He said, I don't threaten people. Who does that? He called Ray Fisher a bad actor in both senses. Whedon told New York he was not mannerly with Carpenter when she told him she was pregnant, but he denied ever calling her fat. Most of my experiences with Charisma were delightful and charming. She struggled sometimes with her lines, but nobody could hit a punchline harder than her. For Trachtenberg's allegations, Whedon said he had no idea what that was about. Other allegations that he was accused of, Whedon said they seemed false. And when Whedon was asked about an affair that he was having with an assistant on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he simply replied he should have handled the situation better. Going down this entire rabbit hole of Joss Whedon's allegations and all the gossip that I found on Reddit and online is just... People are people. We gotta stop putting people on pedestals. We gotta stop holding artists and celebrities on a higher... We gotta stop holding these people up on a pedestal and thinking that they're so great and amazing, because they're just human at the end of the day. And as far as separating artists from their art, sometimes you just have to. Sometimes you just have to do that. Like, I could take all my Buffy DVDs and my books and everything I've collected over the years, all the stuff that I've cared about, all the stuff that I've poured time into learning about and coming up with my own ideas about what these stories mean to me. I could take all that stuff outside right now and I could burn it. That doesn't hurt Joss Whedon. That hurts me. And it's the same thing with Harry Potter. I could take all my Harry Potter books and all my DVDs and I could go and burn them because J.K. Rowling says terrible things about trans women. But that doesn't hurt her. I already paid for those things. I paid for them decades ago. So to get rid of all that stuff now, it's like that doesn't hurt them. It hurts me, because then I'm taking something that I treasured and cared about, artwork that I cared about, that I love, and I'm just basically throwing my money in the trash. So all that to say that sometimes you just gotta separate the artist from the art so that you can get by. And that's what I'm choosing to do. That's what a lot of people have chosen to do. And even Sarah Michelle Gellar said she's happy to be Buffy, not happy to be associated with Joss. So she too is separating her art from him. And honestly, I think that's the best way to do it sometimes, because you might be supporting people right now who are awful in some way and you don't even know it. And the only safe way to really avoid that is to just never consume art again, or like never do anything, never go anywhere. You might have a favorite restaurant, but maybe the owner has some beliefs or has done something terrible. How many times have you really loved a movie and it was made by the Weinstein Company or Kevin Spacey's in it? I mean, these things are unavoidable, but I don't know. Tell me in the comments below how you feel about it. Did I do this video justice? Did I leave anything out? Yes, there were some very gossipy things where actresses were actually named in a gossip column. I didn't say their names here because we can't confirm any of that stuff, and it's just really, I don't want to throw people under the bus like that. But tell me in the comments how you feel. How do you feel about separating an artist from their art? Let me know. This is a discussion that I think is really important to have. That is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and share, subscribe, drop me a line below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.